Good morning, and on the second day of the Lubgrax, which I think has been a very successful event so far. So congratulations to the organizers, and as usual, it's always a pleasure for me to present here at Lubgrax. So today I'm going to talk a little bit first about the changing base oil market. You've heard a lot about it yesterday, but as you know, NYNAS is a Swedish-based company, so we really have our feet on the ground of what's happening in Europe. It's been changing very, very, very fast. And then afterwards, I will share with you what NYNAS has done in response to this changing base oil market. So just a little bit about NYNAS. We're not a typical oil company. Most oil companies focus only on really producing the fuel and have a small portion focus on the bitumen and base oil, whereas we really buy a very different kind of crude and we are just focused on base oil production and bitumen. We're really experts in hydrotreating, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. Right, the changing base oil market, it's been changing very rapidly. We see that the needs of the automotive industry, which is driven by a lot of the environmental legislation, is really moving a lot of companies to shift from Group 1 towards Group 2 and 3. And we see that the needs of the industrial lubricant market turns out to be inconsequential to this development. It's not really been taken into consideration. We find that with the loss of Group 1 from the market, there are some what we call collateral damage issues. There becomes a loss of some technological aspects like solvency and viscosity. If we look at the current world market, we see that about 60% goes to automotive applications and about 40% goes to industrial lubricants. The current Group 1 base oil, about 70% of that goes into industrial applications. So this changing of the base oil market with the loss of Group 1 is really going to have an impact, I think, on the industrial applications. So Europe alone has about 25% of the overall global Group 1 capacity. And if we look for what we see on the ground just in the last 18 months, is almost like, in very real terms, 1 million tons of Group 1 removed from the market. We notice that some of our customers are quite affected by it. Some people were completely caught off guard, were not prepared and perhaps told that they would not be receiving product in a few months' time, whereas the other more large organizations who had probably more long-term agreements in place with their suppliers fared a lot better and haven't really seen any impact. But we think that it's a nice opportunity actually to enter into this gap in the market. So with the loss of Group 1, we see that there will be a technological issue of a solvency gap because Group 1 provides a good solvency. Solvency is important in order to dissolve additives into the formulation, as well as to keep the oxidation products in solution and try and prevent sludging and deposit, etc. In lubricating greases, the base oil also affects the soap yield and also the soap oil interactions. Of metalworking fluids, the solvency is very important to have stable emulsions. If we look at the viscosity perspective, we see that with the removal of Group 1, and these percentages, does it work? I can't really see the red dot, but the percentages there represent the yield that all of those production lines can generate. So for example, a Group 1 could generate like a sort of 38% yield of light neutral, a 13% yield of a medium neutral, a 33% yield of a heavy neutral, etc. So if group 1 is removed from the market, first we see that bright stock will be removed from the market, and there will be a shortage of heavy neutrals because group 2 will only help with about 20%, and group 3 would not be able to produce these kind of viscosities. And this is mostly due to the processes. As you know, this is hydrocracking and hydrofinishing and dewaxing and isomerization and a lot of processes that result in these kind of yields. So once, as group 1 is removed, you will see a shortage of the high viscosity grades. All right, so NYNAS' approach to this particular issue was that we decided to introduce a new base oil range into the market. When we first thought about it, we thought it needed to be something that could be quite widely used in the industrial lubricant applications. This particular products are a blend of paraffinic and naphthenic molecules. We call them a NY-base range or our new range. We wanted to make sure that they were very similar chemically compared to group 1. It would give people a high degree of flexibility. It was something that could be immediately available, and you'd have the benefits of an excellent low temperature property, which you get from an naphthenic oil. Some of the challenges that we might face with this new range is that it will have a much lower sulfur content than group 1, which means that you'll lose some of the intrinsic antioxidation properties, but you will also have a much better response to antioxidants. Lower flash point, if that's an issue, lower viscosity index, and higher volatility. So these kind of products would not be suitable for sort of OEM approvals where you need quite low NOAC results. So we thought that we would like to first, because in the market we are missing viscosity and solvency. So we targeted these two characteristics when we made these products. We target viscosity and solvency. Also, we wanted to make it easy for those customers who found themselves in a difficult situation. So it was to be a drop-in product with as little reformulation as possible. A little reworking of labels and safety data sheets and those a lot of issues. So our plan was really that it would be sort of the same, but not quite. Great. So this is how we see the new range kind of fitting in. If we look at the API groups there, I don't think the dot works, really. Too much light, yeah. If we look on the side there, you have the group 1s, 2, and 3, and on the bottom we have the viscosity ranges. So we see this new range as something sort of filling the gap between 2 and naphthenics, I would say, which probably falls on the other side. Bright stock, as I mentioned, will be quite removed from the market. So we think that heavy naphthenics can also play a part in filling that gap. Great, so this is a picture, I'm not sure how it looks on the screen, of the products we created, which is the row in front, and behind is the group 1 solvent neutral reference. So these are sort of SN 70 to SN 600, running through to 100, 150, 300, 500 as well. Again, as I mentioned, when we first targeted viscosity and annealing points, so we tried to match them up. So that's the blue and the purple lines, trying to get them as close as possible. You also will have the benefits of a good pour point because you have naphthenic molecules there. We then, of course, had to make what we call an ISO-VG range. When we first went out into the market, the first feedback we had from customers was, what about the VI? Because even though anything over 80 viscosity index is classified as maybe a group 1, people are too used to using a 95 VI. So there was this expectation in the market that they still wanted a product with a higher VI. So we then had created this sort of second ISO VG range, 32, 46, 68, and 100 centistokes, specifically targeting the viscosity index for those who needed, who really wanted it. Right. So the first thing after we created it was that we needed to look at some applications and to be sure that this can really work as a drop-in. We focused, of course, a lot on hydraulic fluids, and we made a model hydraulic fluid and did some tests. So I'll discuss a few of these things now. Yes, what's quite important is elastomer compatibility, because if somebody is using a group 1 based hydraulic fluid in a stationary system and they wish to replace it with group 2, you will find a lot of incompatibility between the elastomers. So they will probably shrink, and then you could have a lot of leakage in a plant. So we wanted to make sure that there was a good response to this. So we looked at several different type of elastomers. I've just listed there the 4 commonly utilized one. This is an extensive study, but I'm just going to highlight one as we don't have too much time. So what we did was we made 2 model hydraulic fluids, and we tested them as such. We took some of the test specimens and had them in the oil at 100 degrees for 1 week, and then we check the shore hardness and also the mass increase or decrease. So of course some softening is usually allowed by most of the standards, but any mass decrease or shrinkage is generally not allowed, because this will have usually serious consequences for O-rings. So if we look at the NI-base range, so it's NR 70, 100, 150, etc. The other 46 are the model hydraulic fluids that we made as well. And then right at the end of the graph, I have a solvent neutral 150 as a reference. So here we see that there is some softening of this particular type of rubber, acetonitrile. This is a sulfur cured. And then looking at the mass change following the same trend, we see some obviously swelling in the rubber seal. And then focusing just on the ISO VG range and conducting exactly the same test. And also those 2 model hydraulic fluids, which are at 46 centistokes, are made with the ISO VG range. And again, we see also a softening of the rubber and the increase in mass, which is again the swelling. So we find that it pretty much follows within the trend. It kind of gave us the results that we expected. And we felt that this kind of screening made us comfortable that we could make a good recommendation, and we thought it was a good indication for no harm in this particular aspect. Right, so we made a hydraulic fluid. We took 2 of these new NI-based products, and we added a normal additive package that we got commercially. We weren't 100% sure what was in them. We knew there was antioxidant, anti-wear, rust and corrosion, etc., a standard package. We did include a pour-point depressant, because that is typically what is included in the European markets. We then benchmarked this against a commercial hydraulic fluid in the market. So we just call that M46, and the one we made is HM46. Right, so we ran, of course, the standard sort of foam and emulsibility tests and filtrability tests, etc. And here I have a comparison against the ISO standard. And in general, we were quite happy with the results. We did not run the toast, but what we have here is the pressurized vessel rotating. I almost said bomb test, right? But you can't say that word in airports. So you have to say rotating vessel. The rotating vessel oxidation test, here, the last one at the bottom, is actually the Swedish standard of 300 minutes, which is equal to 1,000 hours untossed. So we say that we think it will pass. So we were pretty happy with this result. This is again just comparing some of the typical characteristics of the model that we made versus the commercial. And as you can see, we try to match it up quite closely. You get a lower flash point, you get the benefits of a good pour point, and there is slightly more water, but not too much. We ran some Icp analysis. Of course, there's a hydraulic fluid package in here, so we weren't fully aware what was in the package. We do know that the oil we made would have quite a low sulfur content compared to a group 1. But we suspect that all of that contribution is from the additive package. But still pretty much in line with what's on the market. Right, so as I mentioned, we also had an ISO-VG range which was targeting viscosity index. So we took this product and made the hydraulic fluid using the same principles, and again benchmarking it with something already on the market. Running again the filtrability and the foam test, the demultibility, etc. And we see again that we are compliant with the ISO standard. Again, we have the a very good result in the rotating pressurized vessel. I think all the old school people still say rotating bomb, right? So again, very good results, meeting the Swedish standard, which we interpret as meeting toast. Here's the normal analysis. Again, we'll see that the flash point is a bit lower than the commercial one. Excellent low temperature properties. Slightly more water. The ICP analysis, same kind of information that we saw with the first model hydraulic package. Right, so the second idea we had was that we wanted to ensure that this was a drop-in product for some customers. So if somebody found themselves in a stick, they could just order a drum and put it into their system. So we did a miscibility test, looking at 3 blends, 90, 10, 50-50, and 10-90. And again, looking at filtrability, foam, air release, demultibility, etc. So what did we have? Again, we were quite comfortable with the results that we saw. Comparing to the ISO standard for all the blends or miscibility tests, we were comfortable with the results. So, in conclusion, we can say that these novel hydraulic fluid formulations displayed all the desired and expected results. We were really impressed with the oxidation stability. We thought that it compared quite well with the leading commercial hydraulic fluid on the market. It was quite compatible when we looked at sort of miscibility, if people wanted to drop in at different percentages. And we thought there was no significant differences between any of the physical properties. We also had another independent company in Germany. They were quite excited when they saw this presentation, and so they took the ISO VG68 and further tested wet filtrability, demultibility, and corrosion, and they had quite positive results, and they've actually presented that at another conference in Germany. Great. So in summary, I think that the fate of the base oil market in Europe and globally is really dependent upon the developments of the trends in the fuel refining industry. We think that it's going through quite dramatic changes, and I'll talk even more. I have a presentation in the other room this afternoon. I will look at what we have done in the grease applications. We think that Group 2 and Group 3 base oil production has grown at the expense of Group 1. And with the rationalization of the Group 1, you will have a deficit of solvency and viscosity, and we think that Nafinis can fill a part of that gap. And we have product readily available to help those who need it. So thank you. That was me. And if there's any questions, I do have a translation, so you can ask in Portuguese.